Holy mackerel. Oh my gosh. Whatever mod is doing this has really taken the administration building and made it very overwhelmingly administrative. Hello everyone and welcome back to that one playthrough of Kerbal's space program. I am Kyle once again and we stand here with, you guessed it, another test. Only this is a very important test because we've actually got a contract to test the Airstream Protective Shell, which will be useful when we send our first satellite into space. And to top things off here with this little test, I'm going to reveal the craft that I am hoping to get into orbit. It's a little CubeSat style, so hopefully this device actually tests correctly. So we got to do it through the staging. So without further ado, we shall reveal our little satellite that we're going to hope to put into orbit. Now, a little disclaimer: this does have a seismic accelerometer on it, which we won't take into space. I just couldn't remember if I had done this from the launch pad. It looks like I might have, but I'll collect that anyways, just to make sure we finish up the rest of that science. We have to do a mystery goo containment as well, I believe. Nope, we've already done that, but we can still get squeeze a little bit more science out of it. And I think I've done all these other ones, yeah, so these aren't really necessary here. So we'll grab a little bit of science. We tested our Airstream Protective Shell, our fairings, so we know that those should be acceptable when we try to use this to take stuff into orbit. And then we've also got a minor amount of testing on each one of these parts, one of which is a new probe core that we got in our last batch of research that we selected on the tech tree in the last episode. So let's try and build a rocket to send into orbit today. All right, and here is the vehicle we're going to attempt to do it in. I introduce you to the Triumph 1. The Triumph will hopefully triumph in its task of trying to triumph above the atmosphere. Its predecessors had a bit of a struggle, but with the upgraded engines on this bad boy, we've got fins for some control. There is some gimbal on this, which should give us a lot of integrity on our way up into the spatial regions. Additionally, we've got a vacuum engine under here. I put some, I think these are the spiders. Yep, the little spiders, because they have gimbal control. And I don't believe the vacuum engine of the Pug, I don't believe this has gimbal at all. So I wanted to make sure I still had control there. There is a probe core on here with a little gyroscope as well. So there is a reaction wheel on top of that. So it should have a limited control on the actual probe, but the rest of it I want to make sure as it's flying, it's going to be a-okay. So without further ado, we do have these engines tested. So again, generation 4, really. How are we jumping up generations that quickly? I think I just truly don't understand how this mod works. We're going to go ahead and ramp our engine up here, and then when we get up to full throttle, we'll keep our vessel indicator here so we can keep track of our total delta V here and each stage. We can obviously see it up here as well as keep track of some of the other tabs, but I like to have this kind of looking at what our delta V is doing as we increase in altitude for our vacuum engine's efficiency. So let's go ahead and fire this up, detach our clamps, and we will be on our way. Now the thrust to start with on this is actually pretty low, lower than what I'm usually comfortable with. I believe, yeah, it was below 1.3 G's. Thrust to weight ratio rather was less than 1.3, meaning that acceleration off the pad is a bit slow compared to what I prefer, but once we get up to a reasonable altitude, we should be able to start to tilt this thing a little bit and start letting gravity do most of the work to get a gravity turn going. So I'm going to just subtly throw a couple of degrees on here, just to slowly get things moving. If we can get it to about 10-ish degrees comfortably, and then just kind of let the fins take over after a given point. Remember, unlike regular Kerbin and vanilla, which is has an atmosphere max of 70 kilometers, in JNSQ we are looking at actively trying to get up to 80 kilometers at bare minimum to reach orbit. So right now we're doing pretty good. This first stage is doing some good work. I'm going to bring my thrust down a little bit. I I want to save a little bit of fuel, and what I want to do is see if we can start to get this arching over just a tad more. Because our apoapsis height is looking pretty good. Actually, we can do some experiments up here. Do a mystery goo, finally, at high altitude. We will get more science if we were to do that in space, but we got to gather it at some point at this altitude anyways, so. Alright, so that is burned out, and we're not quite as, there we go. Not quite where I want to be angle-wise, so I'm going to angle this a bit more so we can start to pick up some lateral velocity. Altitude is looking okay, but we really, really need to start picking up a lot of speed. Now, this has a good amount of thrust on it. And it's only going to get better and better as we get higher and closer to space as far as the efficiency of these engines. Again, there's no gimbal on the Pug, so I put a couple of those spiders on the edge of it there so we have a little bit more control. We're going to reach plenty of altitude. This thing is really definitely going to space. Our time to apoapsis is kind of staying pretty even. It is going down, but it's going down very slowly. So as this thing gets lower in weight, we should start to see that climb back up. Time to apoapsis is hovering about 116. Okay, so it is going up now, so that's good. Yeah, this thing's going to do pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and stage again so we can get rid of the extra weight from, well, that was pretty explosive, from our protective shell. And now we can see our little CubeSat here. We are officially in space, so I'm going to go ahead and extend the antenna here as well. And I'm really just going to take this, I think, straight down to horizontal, so we can just get tons of horizontal speed now. Really start helping us achieve orbit. Orbital speed, I can't remember exactly what it is in JNSQ. It's high, though. 3,000 something. This is a lot more than it takes to get to orbit on Kerbin in vanilla. Okay, we can go ahead and stage again. And we've got 2 minutes until apoapsis. But you can see this is it. This is the little guy that's going to be in orbit. Let's go ahead and look at our map. I can't do an actual maneuver node. So what we're going to do here is we're going to keep track of our time to apoapsis kind of on the top left here. About 2 minutes, 35 seconds currently. And as we get closer to that, we'll get ready to fire up this engine again. I do want to see how quickly it accelerates. Not very fast. Time to apoapsis with this burning is going up, which is a good thing. So I don't necessarily need to worry about firing the engine quite yet. But yeah, now that we're up here, we should see what other science we can do. We got our barometer, which I think, yeah, we actually did a lot of this, now that I think of it, with did a lot of this with that sounding rocket that first got to space. Really, if anything, what we should try and look to do is get this in a much higher orbit. Because I'm assuming that high space is still maybe 250 kilometers, even with this mod, and if that's the case, we should just try and get this satellite up a little bit higher. So we'll bring our apoapsis as close to 250 as we can. Obviously, I don't want to waste too much fuel because I want to make sure that, one, we actually get to orbit, and we don't just have a really high suborbital flight with this thing. But I'm pretty sure we'll be okay. This is the Ant engine, so really small, tiny, tiny, tiny engine that you probably have never used before, but really good for really small probes like this that don't need a lot of thrust. Super efficient too, so you can get a lot of usage of your fuel, a lot of delta V with very small tanks. This final stage I think had like 900 delta V in just what you're seeing here, which is quite a bit. If we were already in orbit in vanilla Kerbal Space Program, 900 delta V would have easily taken you to the moon. And we are actually raising our apoapsis positively. So I'm going to go ahead and shut off the engine. I don't like I don't like the sideways camera view like that, but we're close to orbit. The camera flipped like that, we know we're close. This will be successful. I don't know why I'm saying should be. This will be successful. I just want to get closer to our apoapsis site, so I'm going to time warp. Just going to let this thing float around a little bit. We do need to, actually, now that I think of it, we do need to make sure that we're going to have a connection. Some kind of signal control. I did not contemplate this very well, because right now I have limited probe control. And I am playing with the need for probe control. Which means we better start crossing our fingers, actually, that this thing picks up a signal somewhere. This could be bad. This could be really, really bad. I have no idea where the signals are on this version of Kerbin. And we are currently losing altitude now. There's a little body out there. Oh, look, you can see Joule from here? That's pretty cool. Go figure. Anyways, to the task at hand, which was... Oh, wait, we have ground station now. We have contact. Okay, we're gonna just try and power with a little bit of extra lift here. And, okay, we're comfortably into orbit, so nothing to worry about now. What I will do, though, let's go completely prograde and power up, see if we can get the apoapsis above 250 and see if that allows us to get science high over Kerbin. So there's 300, give or take. So let's go ahead and time warp a little bit again, just to see if that's actually going to give us anything. Okay, so that's still not considered high over Kerbin. So let's wait till we get back down to our periapsis. And then at our periapsis, when we're at our lowest point, we'll try and push our apoapsis a little bit higher again. Alright, we're just about there, so we're going to go... Well, if we get probe control, I should say. Get probe control, then we'll go higher again. Can only hope. We'll warp a little bit. Keep an eye up in the top left when we see that signal come in again. There it is. Okay, let's go prograde. And I'm literally just going to burn all of the fuel in this. Take our altitude as pretty much as high as we can go. I'm going to say we should be able to get past 500 kilometers pretty easily. Let's kind of look at where we are on the map. Oh yeah, this is going to be a hard mod if we're burning through all of this, and that's as big as of an elliptical orbit as we've got. Oh boy, this is going to be tough in the long run. Alright, what did we make it to though? 888 kilometers. Let's see if that takes us to high orbital science. I'm hoping. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so it stopped my time warp when we hit 800 kilometers, and that's where it is now. So we're gonna hold on to these. We're gonna collect these. I'm actually thinking I'm gonna reset the goo canister because I haven't transmitted that data yet, and I'm gonna take it from this high space because it's gonna be worth way more science. Let's go ahead and collect this. I'm not gonna transmit yet because we're on the dark side of the planet, and that can create some issues. So I want to make sure that one, we're going to face our solar panels right toward the sun. Ooh, that is pretty. We need to go and think long-term screenshots here. Ooh, with the, there we go. Yeah, now we're talking. Ooh, cool little shots here. Hold on. Yeah, that's not quite as cool a shot. It's in a shadow, kind of. Anyways, let's go ahead and observe all of our data real quick, and then we'll transmit. Hopefully we get all of that sent. Boom, done. 5 science transmission. We're at 20. Let's go ahead and review the thermometer. That is sent. Make sure we don't lose electric charge too far here. To be able to transmit barometer. And done. So, good. Oh, we're 0.1 away from getting another node. Well, that's just depressing. What a bummer. Alright, but there it is, folks. The first satellite we have put into orbit around the JNSQ version of Kerbin. It was actually a lot easier than I thought it would be. You know, the first couple rockets we built were a little questionable, but the gimbaling engines, more powerful liquid fuel engines, it's part of the reason why I wanted to research a lot of those things. I knew they would make it a lot easier, and then it was just a matter of calculating the correct delta V to get us up here. Nice small little probe, kept it light so that we could be nice and simple. We'll obviously be able to send more science up now that we know we can comfortably get up here. This thing made it pretty far as how far away it actually is in its current altitude. Looking at the actual orbit itself though, I mean, that's not very far considering we're working with a bigger Kerbin, so when we start looking at going to the moon and Minmus, these are going to be a lot tougher, and I have no idea what the delta V is to get to these right now, so what I will probably do is look at a delta V map. But we do have some world's first milestones as well. We have broken a speed record of 2,500 meters per second, 2.5 kilometers per second, and we've achieved orbit, which is worth a big pile of cash, which is awesome. And yes, we have completed the contract itself. There is no such thing as the final frontier. Oh, that's the same message it gave me last time, isn't it? That was worth some science too, actually. And we got some new strategies. Moon probes, Minmus probes, pilot focus, engineer focus, science focus. I don't know what any of these are. I should really figure that out. What mod is that from? Alright, well there's not much else we can do up here with this guy, so I'm going to return to the Space Center. Oh, I think this is what all those things are. This is a holy mackerel. Oh my gosh. Whatever mod is doing this has really taken the administration building and made it very overwhelmingly administrative. Astronaut training program. $500,000 setup. Hired astronauts start at level 1. Oh. Well, that's cool. Astronaut training program 2, start at level 2, level 3. Oh, these are very cool. Massive scale launches. 40,000 funds when reaching orbit with a vessel with a mass of at least 20 tons. So you just get money every time you do that. That's kind of cool. Contract standards. Okay, so what are these other crewed missions? The moon. Must have returned a crew from orbit of Kerbin. Now that you've proven you can get to Kerbal to orbit and back, we need you to continue to break new barriers. We have a choice of nearby bodies that we can get to. We choose to go to the moon not because it is easy, but because it is hard. So it gives you more funds on milestones for the moon, minus 80% funds to milestone gains for other bodies. Increases likelihood of receiving contracts for moon. You have to plant a flag, penalty. If you cancel before it is completed, penalty for reputation. 100 grand advance, reward 25,000. Huh. Well, this is cool. This actually makes it so that it's a little bit more applicable to try and, you know, create little programs to get to places. More motivation. I'll have to dig through a lot of these, but it looks like some of them are actually doable. So like, let's see. Can't do this, but I can do moon probes, Minmus probes, local science. More bonus to KSC science. I don't think that's really what we need. Engineer focus. Okay, yeah, this is the ones that I just got. Okay, so you can only have one of the focuses active. 50% reward to station, clever sat, and bases and station contracts versus the piloting one, rewards for tourism. And then science is reward for science collection and field research contracts when a scientist is present. But you can't have the other ones active. That's really interesting. So there's a setup cost, and then you get a bonus. So you kind of want to keep it active for a while. It's not like you can keep switching between them very much. So it depends on what stage we are within our program. Like if we're going to start doing a lot of orbital construction, building large ships or stations, this would be the one to do. If I do a lot of tourism or plan to do a lot of tourism, maybe once the station is built, then I would do this. When we really start going to a lot of other bodies, we really want to have science active. So this is unique. This is really cool. Some of these are, yeah, some 100% reward. Wow. So you can go pretty crazy with this. This doesn't cost anything to set up too, which is good. I think I figured out what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to take the moon probes as far as the administrative strategies go. This is going to give us 100K. It's going to give us a bonus on any milestones related to the moon. Increased likelihood of receiving moon contracts, which is good. So I'm going to take this. Are you sure you want to activate this strategy? It can't be modified once active. Yes. Alright, so we have moon probes. We have to obviously land 3 probes on the moon is the goal of this. I don't think there is a time limit though. Does this mean I can't do anything else? Oh, I can only do one strategy. I guess I have to upgrade the administrative building, which is a bit expensive. I could do it, but I just got the money for that. So then what I want to do is I have one contract I just accepted to test an engine I've already used landed at Kerbin. The reason I'm going to do that is because it gives me 1 science, and I literally need less than 1 science to unlock another node. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to go into exploration plus, and I'm going to do start exploring the moon. So that we can complete this contract of doing a flyby, which will actually give us a bunch of milestones in which we're going to get a bunch of bonus cash for because of the strategy we just picked. So we'll accept that. Alright, so quick test again of the Valiant engine. Go ahead and do that. Contract completed. Perfect. Grab that 1 science. And then we'll head right over to the R&D building immediately. Alright, so I'm discovering there's not much here that I actively need right away. A lot of these are just going to be next steps into the next tier or the next little segment next to it. So like, I would like to get command pods for Kerbals, which means I'm going to need enhanced survivability, but I don't really need stuff in enhanced survivability yet. So I'm thinking about just doing general construction because there's some additional fuel tanks and a couple other things like Docking Port Junior might be useful earlier rather than later, as well as some RCS monoprop tanks. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one for now, and that'll actually help us kind of with part counts as well with some of the bigger fuel tanks, because the last vessel that just launched that little satellite actually did reach the part count limit because I had to put 4 small fuel tanks on the first stage. So if I can condense that a little bit, it'll give me more versatility in later stages, more complex probes. So I think that'll be a good addition. And then I think another little good test of being able to launch something into orbit of Kerbin will actually be to do some of these ScanSat missions. So this one's pretty easy. Low resolution altimetry scan of Kerbin, which is basically just going to give us, you know, altitude of the body, not necessarily where biomes are. But this can be an easy one to just launch into a polar orbit, and I don't think it has to be too high. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and take this. And I think that will be a good mission to go ahead and do real quick. It'll give us some easy cash, as well as we get to kind of reuse that same launch vehicle that we just used with a few modifications, I think. And unfortunately, I was unable to record that actual launch. So you'll notice we're still using the Triumph 2 launch vehicle. We've got 2 side boosters on the side, and we're going to launch this altimeter satellite. You will notice, though, underneath the rocket, this is not actually the launch pad from our save file. No, this is actually from a sandbox playthrough. And the reason I had to do this was because I didn't want to launch the vehicle a second time in the actual you know, let's play playthrough that we're doing. So yeah, we're doing this just as a showcase to show you exactly how this whole mission went, and it was successful in the actual save file for the Let's Play. Everything went perfectly to plan. There were no errors actually whatsoever with the O-Scrap mod. As we can see here, we had a fuel tank issue, but it does not disrupt the overall mission in this kind of simulated demonstration I'm doing for you right now. I am playing this at about 1.5 speed just to make sure we get through the whole thing, not too slowly. And you can see here we've got those side boosters gone. Pretty good ascent profile. I actually was less efficient in this second time doing this. The first time I did it, I made it to orbit with the satellite having a little over 100 delta V remaining in the tank, so I can actually maneuver it a little bit if I needed to. This one you'll notice gets a little scary right at the end as far as whether or not I'm capable of doing it. But nonetheless, we are able to demonstrate that the vehicle did work properly. You'll notice we're also moving in a northerly trajectory. We're going to go into a polar orbit for this. We have the second stage active here, which is the same as has previously been used and demonstrated. We know it is proficient. We know it will work. It's got 4 of those spiders on each side of it, and I think part of the reason why this one wasn't as efficient as the actual launch I did was because I start to kind of really go off of the prograde marker on my nav ball. So realistically what ends up happening is, because I'm not burning completely prograde, we're kind of changing the overall trajectory slightly and wasting some fuel. Nothing really goes wrong at any point during this. Nothing, at least, that's catastrophic. Again, this is just a demonstration. The actual rocket was perfectly capable of getting through without any problems. But you can see here we're approaching about 70 kilometers in altitude. I should blow away the protective airstream shell here pretty quickly. Get rid of that fairing so we reduce weight. I don't remember exactly when I did it. I'm taking forever though, apparently. Come on, Kyle. There you go. And then we can reveal that rocket that has the, or not the rocket, the satellite rather, that we're going to release with that little altimeter kind of dish on top. This has 2 spiders to utilize the gimbal on each. You'll notice I rotate the satellite a little bit too to make sure that solar panel is pointed toward the sun. And then I'm going to go ahead and collect some science here in a second. I don't actually need to do it in this sandbox demonstration that I'm doing right now, but I figured I would show you this is exactly what I did in the actual recording, or not recording, but the actual game, so that next episode, when you actually see this guy in flight, everything will kind of look identical. You'll start to see I really start to point this thing a little bit more toward the planet, because I'm trying to alter the altitude of our overall ascent path here. And what this ends up doing, I think, is part of the reason why I waste a ton of fuel. So we get a lot of altitude here, which is okay, because one thing I wanted to make sure, and this is part of the reason why I go a little bit really off prograde, is I wanted to make sure that I got this into orbit before I lost contact with the ground station. So this thing gets pretty far, and you'll see, yeah, our overall apoapsis is way up above the North Pole. I kind of take it up there hoping, again, that I'll get a ground station contact, and I think I do. Yeah. And then right as we're approaching apoapsis, go ahead and burn under. This is where I realize I have very little fuel, and I'm kind of like, okay, well, let's make sure we're fully prograde and just burn this thing out and see if it gets to orbit. And just barely do we reach that 80-kilometer marker to make sure this thing won't fall back down to Kerbin. Also had a failure here with the probe core, which didn't actually happen in the actual game. Nonetheless, though, everything is exactly where it should be. We go ahead and start some science here to collect some altimeter data, make sure that we're collecting that, and yeah, this thing is in orbit. So I will see you guys next time. This has been that one playthrough of Kerbal Space Program Forging Frontiers. We will continue on into the future, gathering more science, exploring new worlds, and I hope to see you then.